Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our performance-based insurance webinar, How and Why Companies Are Saving Millions Using This Innovative Solution. Before we begin, briefly about your technology today. Your lines are muted for the duration of the webinar. You can ask questions at any time using the question box. You can slide the box open and close using the double or orange arrow, but don't click the black X as we'll close out your session. Now, a little bit about today's speaker. Bob Phelan, Litchfield Insurance Group CEO. He is the author of 2 books, the most recent of which is The Cost of Ignorance, What You Don't Know About Performance-Based Insurance Can Save Your Company's Million. 37-year insurance veteran, lectures nationally on insurance-based topics, and he has an arm and associate in risk management. We're very pleased to have him today for this important webinar. Bob, the floor is yours.
Well, as I looked at that picture of myself and saw that I was a 37-year veteran, I wondered where that picture came from. It looks like it might be my college graduation picture. But anyway, thanks for joining me today. I'm going to give you a little inside baseball on the insurance industry that I'm sure you haven't heard before. And I think as you continue as an insurance buyer, informed by this 70-30 insurance principle that you see on the slide on the screen, you're going to have much better knowledge of how insurance works and how you can learn to benefit from this principle. So here we go. The 70-30 insurance principle. Most business owners and most business buying executives, business insurance buying executives, don't understand where their money goes or what happens to it. All they really know is that every year insurance seems to get more expensive, both the property casualty variety, which we'll be focusing on today, as well as the employee benefits, which is even worse. When an insurance company collects $1 of insurance premium, roughly 30% of it is used to run the insurance company, the overhead. The actuaries and underwriters and marketing people and legal department, all the different pieces of an insurance organization that you might imagine, that's the 30%. The other 70% is allocated for claims. And if you're astute, you're probably saying to yourself, wait a minute, if we pay in $100,000 a year for workers' compensation insurance, and 30% of it is for overhead, that's $30,000. We don't have $70,000 of claims, but we still have to pay the $70,000. So where does that go? I was with a very sophisticated insurance buyer this morning, and I was explaining this principle to him for the first time, and he thought it was insurance company profit. And it really isn't. Property casualty insurance companies don't really make money in the insurance business itself, what's called the underwriting profit. They pay out in claims and administration just about the same amount that they collect in premium. And they make all their money on the float, investing the premium and the reserves held for claims, and they make it all on the float. So if they're not making the money and you're not making the money, where is that $70,000 of your premium going? Most of it goes to subsidize the other companies in the insurance carrier's portfolio. You might be managing your organization very well. You might have very safe operations. That doesn't mean everybody else does, and most don't. They don't understand how insurance works. They don't try to drive down costs through safety, and your premium dollars go to subsidize them because the insurance carrier has to get the pot right. They got to get to even, and they use your money in order to do that. And that is probably the most important thing that you need to take away from today's program because you can take advantage of it. Next slide. How do you leverage the 70-30 insurance principle? How do you get some of that $70,000 back? You have to have all 3 of these components. This webinar today is about the component on the bottom here, performance-based insurance solution, and you're going to hear more about what that is and how it works. But it's very important to understand from the outset that you have to have safe operations, and when people do get hurt, you have to have a process and procedure in place, or through the assistance of your broker, what we call injury management. And injury management is how to reduce the medical expenses for an injured employee, as well as get them back to work as quickly as possible. And if you've had some experience, you know that doesn't always happen, but there's a lot of methodologies that you can bring to bear on that, which make it much more effective. So that's how you leverage it. It's these three components, and now we're going to shift into what is this performance-based insurance, which, as the moderator said, I wrote a book about last year. Next slide. A couple of definitions before we get into the nitty-gritty here. And this is not going to get technical. And just to be sure that I have all the right listeners here, as it said in the invitation, this is really appropriate, or most appropriate, for companies who spend at least $100,000 a year on workers' compensation. That's not a hard line, but to leverage this in the greatest way possible, you need to be spending $100,000 a year. So if you are, there's two types of insurance as I describe them in my book. One is traditional insurance, which I call subsidy-based, and the reason I call it subsidy-based, going back to that slide, the 70-30 insurance principle, you are subsidizing all the other companies in the portfolio if your loss experience is good and theirs isn't. Performance-based insurance is the opposite. You own that money. You own that 70%. And if you don't spend it, you keep it. So use that example. Think of your own numbers. I'm going to stick with the 100,000 because it's the easiest way for me to make the numbers clear. You're going to pay $30,000 in a performance-based program for the fixed cost to run the insurance company. And this is going to be an insurance company of your own if you're very large, or it's going to be an insurance company that's formed for a group of middle market businesses. We use an insurance company that has approximately 380 members, and it's the largest of what we call a group captive insurance company in the world. And it's performance-based, has a 30% fixed cost. The 70% is for you and your claims. So if you only use $20,000 of that, you've got $30,000 of fixed costs, $20,000 of your claims. That leaves the other 50% for you to take at some future point in the form of a dividend. So that's the two different kinds. You probably have subsidy-based now, and we're introducing you to performance-based today. Next slide. So what are the challenges you face when you're out there buying business insurance? If you've been doing it a while, you know you've had surprise rate increases. And your broker will come in and make up some story about the market's hard and everybody's losing money and we got to get more money. Or your experience mod has suddenly gone up because of one claim that you had in the past year. It's inflexible, it's not customized. No matter how good you are, there's no financial reward for favorable claim experience. As I've emphasized here, you're subsidizing all of your competitors with poor claims. You know, it's really a form of socialism. That's what insurance is. The many who perform well subsidize the few who perform poorly. It's, you know, that 80-20 thing. And the safety programs, if you are really doing a great job with safety, it benefits the insurance carrier and or all these subsidized competitors. So it's an arrangement that when most people take a look inside of it, as I've just described here briefly, they're not happy about this arrangement and probably want to hear about an alternative. Next slide. So what are the benefits? PBI is what we call performance-based insurance, and just to keep it simple for us, from now on we'll call it performance-based insurance PBI. You gain control. Your insurance plan becomes customized. Your individual claim experience drives your premium. You're no longer subject to the experience mod in workers' comp. You're no longer subject to the rates that come out of the book that are based on everybody. If your claim experience is outstanding, then that is all determined in your favor, and you pay less money on the go-in and on a net basis. You know the companies you're sharing risk with, which goes back to the old Lloyd's of London when it was first started. People don't know this. Lloyd's had a coffee shop in downtown London back when the shipping industry between countries was first beginning, and they were loading these large ships full of goods. and the individual ship owners didn't want to take on the risk of losing those ships at sea, which was fairly common. So they asked their fellow ship owners to share in the risk to form this mini insurance company, and they would go into the Lloyd's Coffee House and they'd put their name up on the wall on a bulletin board with a piece of paper, and they put the ship, and they put the cargo and the destination, and then other ship owners would go up and write their name under the ship and say what percentage of that they would take as a risk. And that's where the term underwriter comes from. We all use that name to underwrite something, underwrite financing, underwrite insurance, but that's where that comes from. Little piece of insurance trivia from an insurance geek. You also get a lot of risk management when you go PBI. You want to control claims. You want to reduce the cost of injuries. So there's a much higher incentive because you're the one that gets the return on your investment in safety. You keep the profits. Those profits don't go to subsidize your competitors. You get them in the form of a dividend once all claims are closed. So you get 100% of the reward for favorable claims, not just a partial, because now you do get a partial. You might say to yourself, wait a minute, my broker comes out here, he says, your claim experience is great. Instead of your rates going up 15% like everyone else, they're only going up 5%. Well, that's not a reward, and it might not even be true. This is, you own this money and you have total control over that 70%. Next slide. And this is just a quick bit on the insurance carriers. The reason that 30% is even higher than it should be is there's a lot of overhead in there. They're giant companies. You can drive to Hartford and you can see their headquarters. What we're talking about today in a performance-based insurance company is literally a virtual company where all the different component parts are assembled individually by best-of-breed providers, and it eliminates all of that overhead. There's only the essential overhead left to run the insurance company. Next slide. The carriers cut. You know, they do take this cut, but as I said before, they don't really put it into their bank account. From year to year, they might have a profit, but overall, if you look over the last 15 to 20 years, I've been doing this 35 years, and there's some years that are much worse than others. Insurance industry probably loses $1.05, $1.10 maybe on workers' comp over the long haul. And what that means is, when I say they lose that money, if they collect $1 in premium, they pay out $1.05, $1.10 in the form of the fixed overhead and the cost of claims. As recently as 3 years ago, nationally, for the line of business, just workers' comp, the industry was losing 20 cents on the dollar. For every buck they took in premium, they paid out $1.20 in claims and overhead. They were getting killed, and you've probably seen that your rates have come up quite a bit over the last 3 or 4 years as they've tried to even that out. You can save the whole 70% in that 70-30 insurance principle, but that's not likely. Very few companies have no claims. I see it happen with some of our clients, those that really focus on safety. But something more reasonable is in the 25 to 35% range. You can't hit it out of the park and get up over 50%. We certainly have clients that do that, but probably not year in and year out. And to be practical, it's better to consider it in that 25 to 35% range. Which means, if you do the math, if you've got 30% fixed overhead, 25% claims, that's 55%, which leaves 45% of the premium. That's a lot, though, right? 45% is a lot, even for an average claim year, as opposed to a superior claim year where it could be over 50%. Next slide. And this is just a little more comparison, traditional versus performance-based. I'm not going to read through these because you can see them yourself. The key ones is that your premium is determined by your own experience. Your own claim record over the last 5 years of your operating history determines your premium for the next year. Then 1 year drops off, and it's another 5 years. So even if you have a bad year, it only has a 20% impact on that formula. And you don't have that experience modifier effect where one bad year and you're stuck with a high mod for 3 years and you just have to suffer the penalties. You're never going to have to do that again with a performance-based insurance solution. You control your destiny. You're probably never going to go out to bid again because this is going to be the best thing you could ever have. And you'll earn the financial rewards that you deserve for maintaining safe operations. Next, please. So this just shows what the 70-30 insurance principle another way. In the traditional plan, you have overhead of 30% and 70% to subsidize others. In a PBI plan, you have 30% of overhead and then 70% is the potential return. Next. Any of you who are listening who want to go down this road and explore PBI, this is essential. You have to have a safety-driven culture. Because if you're going to take risk with your insurance dollars, you have to have the confidence that you're going to control claims. If you lack that confidence, you're what we call your PBI ineligible. You're not ready yet. We want to get you to a point where you're PBI eligible. If you hear this idea and you say, boy, I can't take advantage of this, which if you read my book, it's actually a novella, business novella, where one business owner has been enjoying the benefits and the financial rewards of PBI for a long time, and the other is suffering to such a great extent that he might go out of business because his insurance premiums are too high. And then the reason for that is one understands what safety means and the other doesn't. It's that simple. I've been doing this for 35 years, and I've seen cultures change where they weren't eligible for this kind of performance, and they wanted it, and they changed it, and it's made a huge impact on their financial results. Next slide. Case study. 2 case studies. I could go on and on with case studies. I've been doing this a long time, but as I said in that earlier slide, an average performer is going to be in that 25 to 35% loss ratio. So if you do the math like I did before, and we came up with a 55% for the losses and the fixed costs, you're paying $100,000, 55,000 of it is going in expenses and claims, and you got 45,000 left. That's an average performer. We look at the results for our performance-based insurance clients on a monthly basis, and I was looking at the most recent month's results yesterday in preparation for this webinar. And we have a client that has been in a performance-based program for 17 years, going on 18. And 2 out of the last 5 years, they had a 0 loss ratio. One was a 7.5, one was a 9.5, and one was about a 5. So if you add that all up, you come up with a low single-digit average. So if they're the $100,000 premium, they've got 30%. 3% of 100 is $3,000, so call it $33,000. $67,000 are left for them to be paid in the form of dividend once those claims are closed. So if you've never heard of someone having a 0% loss ratio, it is possible, and I've seen 0 and very, very low single-digit loss ratios in heavy industries like construction, manufacturing, wholesale delivery where people are lifting and driving trucks. It really is possible, and if you're not in that position today, you can certainly get there and be eligible for this kind of treatment. Next slide. Who uses these? You've probably said, I've never heard of performance-based insurance. And that's probably true because I invented that term, and the reason I did was the insurance industry is filled with a lot of intimidating jargon, as you probably know. And the performance-based programs that are out there are confusing, intimidating, and most people don't understand them. They're not presented properly. So my goal in life is to show this concept to as many people, make it as simple as possible so more companies can take advantage of this. The most sophisticated insurance buyers in the country are the Fortune 500. They're the biggest companies. They've got whole departments that focus just on insurance and claim management. They've got someone in the position of a risk manager who's the insurance buyer. Every single one of them, unqualified, every single one of them, buys their core insurance on a performance-based basis. If you took it out to the Fortune 1,000, you've probably got most of them, certainly 90 to 95% of them. And what's happening now is middle market companies, and middle market we define from about $100,000 to $3 million or so in terms of an insurance spend. They're starting to move to this because brokers like myself and others I know around the country have learned these concepts and are starting to apply them more frequently to the middle market because it makes sense. Next slide. Other performance-based benefits is you control these premium swings that you've all had. Surprises are gone. You are going to know really closely what your premium is going to be from year to year. And you know all the other companies that you're sharing risk with in your program. It's not just some anonymous portfolio of poorly managed companies. To get into these performance-based programs, as I said earlier, you've got to have a strong safety culture, you've got to have strong results, otherwise you don't get to play. This is for the big boys, the sophisticated companies that really understand this mechanism and want to make it work. Next. So
well,
that's my contact information. I've tried to keep this
very good, Bob. No, thank you very much.
Moderator?
Yes, I really appreciate that. Terrific and concise. We do have a few questions that have come in. I hope you won't mind answering a few questions.
No, that'd be great.
And for everyone on the line, here's Bob Phelan's information. His direct phone number is listed there, 860-761-7201. This webinar will be recorded. If you wish to share with other executives in your organization, please reach out to Bob Phelan and he'll hook you up and make sure that you get the recording. Now, the first question that came in is, several people asked something similar. What happens if I get hit with a really large claim?
Yeah, that's a big concern because you look at this, and we've been talking about the averages. And as I tell business insurance buyers, no matter how good their experience is and how well they control safety, there's always potential for what we call a severity loss. It can happen in automobile very easily. Every vehicle on the highway is a lethal weapon. It can happen with liability for lots of different reasons depending on the industry. And it can easily happen with workers' comp. All of these performance-based insurance programs, and there are many, in my book I think I list a dozen of them. My book focuses on one, but there's probably a dozen of them. All of them have an insurance piece, because the way they work is when you have traditional insurance, in the lower levels of claims, you're trading dollars with the insurance company. If Travelers pays out $50,000 in claims, they're going to get it back from you in premium the next year or the next year after that. And you're just trading these dollars back and forth with the frictional costs attached to them. Why do you want to do that? So you have a deductible in these programs, and it depends on the size of your company, depends on your risk comfort level, but it could be anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000. Where you pay from dollar one. And that's why, as I said earlier, you have to feel very confident in the way you've controlled claims and that your experience will continue at that low level in the future. But you can't be unrealistic and think that you aren't going to get hit. So you pay all your claims up to that deductible level. Then in one of our PBI solutions, there's a layer there where you share risk, and it's a small subsidy for others who have a bad year, but it's a very, very small percentage, 5 or 10%, that you subsidize others. And then the rest, we have an insurance company that picks up the catastrophic stuff. It's essential with insurance that you have some form of subsidy. And there's a reason for that, and it's all about the IRS. Those of you who buy insurance now know you get a full tax deduction for your full insurance premium, and you certainly want to maintain that. You can't maintain that without two essential ingredients that the IRS requires for insurance to be insurance. And one is risk transfer, and one is risk distribution. You're transferring the risk into a PBI program because it's an insurance-based program, so you're transferring the risk there. How do you get insurance distribution? In the traditional arrangement, you're subsidizing that whole portfolio of clients in the insurance company, so that's easy. In these other PBI arrangements, you're sharing risk on a very minimal level with all the other companies who've been screened very aggressively that are in that pool with you. So you have to have that. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, I don't want to share risk with others, but it's an essential ingredient because the tax deduction you get from Uncle Sam is a big one on business insurance. What else do you have?
Thank you, Bob. Several people asked variations on this theme. How big do I have to be? How much money do I have to spend? What size do we need to take advantage of this?
As I've used these programs with clients over the last several years, that minimum threshold has come down quite a bit. There used to be a time we had to spend upwards of $500,000 a year. Then it came down to about $250,000, and we have a program now that goes all the way down to about $125,000. And what do I mean by that? You have a lot of different insurance policies. These PBI programs are only available to insurance coverages that have some claims, where there's a little bit of frequency to it, which makes it more predictable. There has to be a little math there for the actuary to compute. Some forms of coverage like umbrella liability, that's pure severity. You've probably never had a claim, so we don't use it for that. We use it for three coverages. Workers' comp is the big one. That's where the money is. With some companies, automobile, if you're a wholesaler, lots of trucks out on the road, so that's a big number as well. And with some companies, general liability, so it's those three, workers' comp, auto, and general liability. It can be just workers' comp if you're up over that threshold, but it can include, and often does include, all three, because once you pass the threshold for comp, why not put the other ones in there too? Chances are they're more profitable and have excess dollars available to you in the form of dividend because you don't have the claims for auto and general liability like workers' comp. You got one more?
We do, and this is kind of an interesting question, and we'll wrap up with this. We have had very low claims. This sounds too good to be true. Why haven't I heard of it?
Yeah, I think I addressed that, but it is something that often comes up. People look at this with skepticism. Why haven't I heard of it? And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is the reason I described just a moment ago. These types of programs were traditionally for very large companies. You might not spend $500,000 a year on insurance. You might not even spend $250,000. And your broker might not know what these performance-based insurance programs are or might not want to offer them to you, which is also very common. Lots of brokers, not picking on yours or anyone, they don't do much more than quote insurance and provide insurance policies. And you need a broker that's going to do a lot more for you. If you remember the triangle back at the beginning here, they need to offer safety services, they need to offer injury management, because if you're going to go into performance-based, you've got to control the costs. And if they don't feel comfortable helping you control those costs, they're probably not going to offer you the program. But probably an even bigger motivation for them is they make more money on traditional insurance than they make on PBI. There's a lot of components to that which I won't get into, but it's plain and simple. The insurance companies make more money on traditional insurance, and the brokers make more. And they work together as a team. We decided a long time ago, and I don't say this in a self-serving way, but we decided that we have to put the client first. And now that we became aware of these programs and we know how powerful they are, we've got to offer them to our clients. So we found a different way to run our business model. Most of our competitors have chosen not to do that, and they just don't put this concept out in front of their customers.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. Our web seminar is now ending. We keep these to 30 minutes. Look for additional webinars on business insurance-related topics from Bob Phelan and the Litchfield Insurance Group in upcoming months. Bob's number is listed again below, 860-761-7201. If you want information on this topic, feel free to reach out to him, and he'll be able to tell you in a few minutes whether or not your company could utilize this type of solution or not. Bob, thank you very much for the time. We thank you all for attending. This web seminar is ending. You all have a great day.